Keep on riding with us as we continue to broadcast the balance and defend the discourse from the Hip Hop Weekly studios. Welcome back to Civic Cipher. I am your host, Ramses Ja.
He is Ramses Ja. I am Q Ward. You are tuned in to Civic Cipher.
Yes, indeed. And stay tuned because we got some more to talk about. If you've been paying attention to the news, you might know the name Luigi Mangione. And normally this isn't something that it's well covered in the news, but we've made some interesting connections, Q in particular. And we thought this was worth discussing because, sometimes things look a little funny and, we're in the position and we've been empowered to speak up, and so we will. So stay tuned because we're going to talk about obviously who he is if you don't know, but we're going to present the way he's being framed in a decidedly black lens, and you take from it what you will, but we think there might be something worth pondering there. So stay tuned for that and so much more. Before we get there, though, it's time to discuss BABA, Becoming a Better Ally, BABA. And today's BABA is sponsored by Friends of the Movement. You can sign up for the free voter wallet from FOTMglobal.com to support black businesses and allied businesses, as well as make an impact with your spending. Again, that's FOTMglobal.com. Today, I want to share with you matwproject.org. Founded by Ali Banat in 2016, Muslims Around the World Project, that's MATW, is a global Islamic charity working across 30 countries around the world. Their 100% donation policy ensures that every single donation goes the extra mile in reaching those most in need. Millions are suffering worldwide. Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese need urgent help. Your priceless donations will help them save lives. Allah says in the Quran, "Whoever saves one life, it is as though he has saved all of mankind." This is chapter 5, verse 32. The devastating nightmare which has impacted Gaza in Palestine for more than a year is now entered Lebanon. With 2.3 million lives changed forever in Palestine, millions more are now at risk across the region. Men, women, and innocent children are facing surreal circumstances which are claiming lives daily. MATW Project are on the ground delivering vital relief across Gaza daily and in Lebanon, where the number of displaced and homeless people is rising every single hour. Please donate urgently, as this assistance will go a long way in relieving the pain and distress of orphans, widows, and the elderly. They operate on a 100% donation policy, so rest assured 100% of your contributions will reach the Palestinians directly. This project is also Zakat applicable, and we want you to find out more at matwproject.org. If that's tough to remember, if you're driving, however you're listening to the show, just think Muslims Around the World, matwproject.org. Yeah, we think that it's worth looking into, so check out the website, see if it's up your alley, and if you can, make a donation, make an impact, and let's change the world together. All right, Luigi Mangione. We work at the Black Information Network, man. We talk about the news. We're supposed to consume and discuss the news with a black perspective. You and I have been black our whole lives, since the 80s. And it's not impossible that we might connect some dots that the mainstream news sources might not connect. Even if we worked at those mainstream news sources, we would connect some dots that those other folks might not connect. And this story has been sort of confusing at different points, because I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Like, is this a class warrior? Is this guy one of us? Is this guy one of them? And I don't even know who us and them is, but you get what I'm trying to say, how you process details as the story continues to unfold. So if you're like me and you are still just kind of watching it all unfold, stay tuned. But if you're not like me and you're not like Q and you're not in a newsroom, 6 days a week consuming all the news that exists, this might be news to you, so allow us to just paint a brief picture for you. All right, this is from the Associated Press. The man accused of fatally shooting the CEO of United Healthcare. Real quick backstory, there was a video that came out, I'm sure you all saw it, but for those that hadn't, this is just a man who's walks up to this CEO as he's walking down the street, shoots him in cold blood, and gets on a bike and rides away. Okay. It appeared to be a targeted attack. There was no robbery, nothing like that. He's out in front of a hotel, walks up to the guy, shoots him. He falls on the ground. Then he bounces to the ounce. All right. So that man pleaded not guilty on Monday to state murder and terror charges, while his attorney complained that comments coming from New York's mayor could make it tough to create and receive a fair trial. Luigi Mangione, age 26, was shackled and seated in Manhattan court when he leaned over to a microphone to enter his plea. The Manhattan District Attorney charged him last week with multiple counts of murder, including murder as an act of terrorism, in a state case that will run alongside his federal prosecution. His initial appearance in New York's state trial court was preempted by federal prosecutors bringing their own charges over the shooting. The federal charges could carry the possibility of the death penalty, while the maximum sentence for the state charges is life in prison without parole. One of Mangione's attorneys told the judge that government officials, including New York Mayor Eric Adams, have turned Mangione into a political pawn, robbing him of his rights as a defendant by tainting the jury pool. Mangione was arrested in a Pennsylvania McDonald's after a 5-day search, carrying a gun that matched the one used in the shooting and a fake ID, police said. He was also carrying a notebook expressing hostility toward the health insurance industry and especially wealthy executives, according to federal prosecutors. An Ivy League graduate from a prominent Maryland family, Mangione appeared to have cut himself off from family and friends in recent months. He posted frequently online about his struggles with back pain. He was never a United Healthcare client, according to the insurer. The killing has prompted some to voice their resentment at U.S. health insurers, with Mangione serving as a stand-in for frustrations over coverage denials and hefty medical bills. It has also sent shockwaves through the corporate world, rattling executives who say they've received a spike in terror threats. Okay. So, Q, I know that you've connected some dots there. We have a little bit more to share, but I'm going to open up the floor to you to jump in, just because I know that there was a reason that we wanted to talk about this guy that came from.
I think that I have more questions than connected dots.
Mm-hmm. And that's fair. That's fair.
There's some things that we just have to assume to be true because we're not investigative reporters in this manner.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just inconsistencies in the information that was provided. But when there was a suspect at large before this young man was arrested and, paraded across our TVs and had a movie style supervillain type perp walk, we just saw photos.
Okay.
Photos of a young man, face covered, hoodie, jacket, backpack. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that noticed that the hoodie, the jacket, the mask, and the backpack are different in a lot of the photos that were present, which could be intentionally confusing, could be unintentionally confusing, could be presented by sources without proper vetting. All these different things can lead to all these different versions of the information being presented to the public. And then you get to public sentiment. Because many may have noticed, a lot of people weren't really angry about what happened. Mm-hmm. And then I have to press pause because I'm a father and I have children, right? And the idea that it should be okay to, because a system has failed you, take out a gun and walk up and take someone's life on the street should be ridiculous to everyone. However, circumstances and a person's potential mind state might make you at least say, oh, he shouldn't have done it that way. I don't agree that he did it that way. I absolutely condemn how he did it and think what he did was wrong, but I understand why he felt like that. Mm-hmm. And as a black person in this country, it is not difficult to mentally take yourself to the point where you do not agree, do not condone, but understand that when it feels like every system that is in place is against you and has failed you repeatedly, which you'd think wouldn't be the case for this young man in this country, you have to pause for a second and try to figure out how come so many people in the public are tattooing this man's face, and he's like got his own little cult following of fans and fangirls and people that want to write letters, and he's become a sort of pseudo celebrity in that way, not just a perp in a heinous crime. the intention in the video, if you've watched it, there are other people present. And I thought it very interesting that the word terrorism or terrorist was included in the charges brought against this man who took out a gun and shot one person, did not attempt to shoot anyone else, did not disarm his weapon, or discharge his weapon in the direction of anyone else. It was very, very premeditated, I'll take. Mm-hmm. But interesting to call it an act of terrorism when we've had people like Kyle Rittenhouse and or name the mass shooter who didn't kill a rich white American, and that word was never brought up. That word was never used, even when they killed.
You don't even want to acknowledge it.
Even when they killed mass people.
You know why though? It's because it's white on white crime.
White on rich white crime, which is an entirely different thing. Mm. And you know, all of it just, it gives you pause. It makes you stop. Like, yo, something's off here.
Yeah.
Because if you read the story, it sounds straightforward. A guy walked down the street, took out a gun, killed someone, got arrested, and is going to jail. Nothing to talk about here. But like you said, if you watch the news or if you're on social media or if you've been paying attention to this story at all, it has from the very onset felt different. Mm-hmm. Something was different. And this system that in any other place in the world would be regarded as a scam. And that's literally insurance in the United States, mm-hmm. of all forms. You pay into this fund, right?
In case something bad happens.
In case something bad happens to you.
And if nothing bad happens?
If nothing bad happens, you don't get money. A rebate, you don't get a refund, nothing. And when something bad happens, they don't say, oh, here's the money we promised. Nope. They then start to investigate you for having made a claim. Even if your claim is just, you now have to pay them more money the next time around to continue to cover you. Or they can determine your claim isn't just and do nothing for you. And that's legal. And in most cases, that insurance is required, as in to operate a motor vehicle. If you are found to not have coverage, you will be fined. But if somebody sideswipes you and keeps going and you're not hurt that bad, they can decide, we'll fix some of it. You've been paying us without accident for 20 years. We'll fix some of it, maybe. You've been paying us without incident for 20 years. I think they said something recently. If you're under anesthesia too long, we won't pay for all of it. If you have a pre-existing condition, we won't cover you. Yeah, you have coverage, but not for that thing that you thought you did. And people die because these billion-dollar corporations that they pay to insure them, to protect them in the event that something happens to them, decide we don't want to. And when tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people have to see their loved ones die because the company they paid to insure them decided they didn't feel like it, over and over again, because they're corporations, not people, just like these oppressive racist systems that we brought up before, they're not held to the same level of scrutiny or the same level of accountability. That corporation, by inactivity, killed someone. Mm-hmm. By the thousands, by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions. And they still get their pension, their bonuses, their vacation, their PTO, their checks every month, every week, every other week, every year. Profits, record-breaking profits. And they get to decide whether you live or die, and no one turns and no one cares. So in this case, this young man cared a lot. And his action may have zero impact, right? It might start a conversation briefly, but we are so callous as a nation and as human beings right now, we'll move on and we won't care. We have fully accepted that this is just the way things are across everything: politics, life, humanity. We live in a world now, quite literally, where the rich are saying, let them eat cake. lining their pockets at the expense of our well-being, and have convinced half of us to support them while they do it.
It's masterful.
It's masterful, but it's diabolical.
Super duper. All right, listen. I want to say something just because I feel led. On this show, we have to have conversations about race. It's such is the nature of the conversations that we have on this show. If we don't broach these subjects, we don't do any healing. When we talk about race, we talk about things in general terms. And I want to just put a note in here that we understand and recognize and respect that individuals are individuals. Individuals are smart, individuals are beautiful, individuals are compassionate, individuals are wonderful. But groups of people tend to be really ugly. We also specifically talk about white men quite a bit on this show. And I want to affirm on behalf of myself and Q, for those who might just be coming to this conversation, that we love white men the same as any other human being on this planet. It is the nature of my very being to love. I got one setting, that's it. Do I get frustrated? Yes. But there is no hate in my heart, okay? So when we talk about white men in general terms, we are talking specifically about the white man that benefits from and perpetuates those same invisible forces that ultimately oppress or disenfranchise the rest of us. We know that there are white men on various rungs of that ladder. Some are uber hateful and they, are out loud with their racism, and some are exceptionally kind and benevolent, and everyone in between, and everyone is on their journey. Such is the nature of any being endowed with consciousness, certainly so with human beings. I am growing as a human being. All of us Homo sapiens, this is the nature of our life. I feel like I need to disclose this right now. Both Q and I have best friends that are white men. Shout out to Tommy, shout out to Kevin, Bootleg Kev. That we grew up with, and their families have loved us. So I want to make sure that is well stated. But also those white men understand that they live in a world where they got some advantages that other people don't have, just the same way that I, Ramses Ja Rudy King Taylor II, understands that I live in a world where I have advantages that my own sisters do not enjoy. And my sisters are smarter than me. They're better looking than me, more ambitious than me. Pick a thing, you know what I mean? But I because I was born with, a Y chromosome, I got some access that that either they don't have, or it's a little bit more challenging for them to get there. So I want to make sure that that's stated. Another part of this that I wanted to share, and this comes from Hollywood Unlocked. Okay. Let me back up a little bit. Those of you that remember Derek Chauvin, he was the guy that kneeled on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes, causing George Floyd to lose his life. He has gotten with another doctor and petitioned the court in Minnesota to allow him to have some evidence, pieces of George Floyd's heart material and his bodily fluids, so that they can try to build a new case to somehow suggest that George Floyd was going to die anyway and that Derek Chauvin had nothing to do with his death.
We're all going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So what they're suggesting is that George Floyd is more responsible for his own death.
Or that Derek Chauvin was not responsible at all. But there's a judge in Minnesota who said, you know what? There's enough here for me to reopen this or rehash this case. I'll read the details so you'll get them. But there's a judge in Minnesota that says, you know what? Yeah, that's enough for me. And therein lies part of what I think the point you've been trying to make, Q, is that a lot of times we'll see that benefit of the doubt. A lot of times the fear associated with black people won't be associated with white people in the same circumstances doing the same thing. a lot of times the grace that we ask be, deployed evenly throughout the population is simply reserved for one group of people. And of course, that sounds like how I feel, but the data, the conviction rates, the amount of arrests are made would certainly support that feeling, that conclusion that I've arrived at, right? And so what we're looking at, and I'll share it, Hollywood Unlocked, according to Dr. Shail, Floyd appeared to have died from a high level of catecholamines, which CBS News reports is a neurohormone important in stress response associated with the fight or flight response. How about that? Or Takotsubo myocarditis maybe, a heart condition that develops in response to intense emotional or physical experience. Okay, so this is Derek Chauvin's case hinges on this Dr. Shail's theory that George Floyd died because his heart was stressed out because of fight or flight. Okay, yeah, if someone's kneeling on your neck, you're going to be feeling that, and you're going to experience that. Or it's this other condition, the myocarditis, which develops in response to an intense emotional or physical experience, right?
Maybe judge, like having your neck kneeled on by a police officer in the street.
Q. So what happens? A judge says, okay, let's put everybody through this all over again. George Floyd's family, the community, the country, the world. Let's put them all through this again. Because the benefit of the doubt, even though we all of us reasonable people could look at that and be like, well, clearly, George Floyd would be alive and well if this guy wasn't kneeling on his neck. He is the reason. We all saw the video. We saw it multiple times. We're going to see it forever. It's going to be taught about in classrooms forever. But that benefit of the doubt exists there. It exists with a lot of these individuals, and it seldom exists for people when your skin is black. We were looking at this guy, I forget his name, but
imagine a black man shooting a white man that's having a stroke, and the stroke being blamed for the death.
Well, that's an interesting question to ponder and a great place to leave it. Thank you all for tuning in for this episode and for every episode of Civic Cipher. I have been your host, Ramses Ja.
He is Ramses Ja. I am Q Ward. Thank you once again for riding with us and hearing out our perspective on some sometimes very, very difficult stories, man.
Yeah. And, this might be our last episode of the year. So interesting.
I won't give my opinions beyond that.
It's an interesting 2024, but listen, man, we're in it together, and we're going to continue to do our part. Again, this show is based in love. We just have challenging conversations that don't always sound like it, but I promise that's every waking moment of our lives. We exist, we walk in love, and we appreciate you trusting us with your time and, as Q mentioned, hearing out our perspective. And until next year, y'all.
Peace.